Hey class, welcome back. Today we're going to continue on with chapter 3, part 2 of tissues. However, today we're going to hit 2 new types of tissue. So one of the types of tissues that we're going to cover is muscular tissue, and then we're also going to cover nervous tissue. So let's get going on muscle tissue. So the whole function of muscle tissue is to contract. If you don't know what contract means, it means to shorten. And when they shorten, they produce movement. So it allows your body to move. Now, there are 3 types of muscle tissue, and we're going to talk about each one of these separately. So the first type is skeletal, then cardiac, then smooth. So let's talk about skeletal muscle first. So skeletal muscle is packaged by connective tissue sheets into skeletal muscles. So they are sheets, and they're going to be attached to the skeleton, or otherwise the bones. So the whole function, why they get their name skeletal, is because they are connected with the skeletal system. So they pull on bones, and they can even pull on your skin. And the whole function of these is to produce gross body movement. And when I say gross, that means like major body movements, like your arm, going to move your legs, run, even facial expressions. So smiling, frowning, making a very confused look because you have no idea what's going on. Now, skeletal muscle is voluntary. This means you can control it. You can control your arms. You can tell your arm to move. You can tell yourself to pick up something. So you can consciously know what's going on. Now, some characteristics of the cells that make up skeletal muscle tissue is that they're striated. And if you don't know what striated means, I put it here in parentheses. It means that there are stripes. And I'm going to show you a picture, and you can kind of see the stripes within that picture as well. It is also multinucleate. So it's going to have more than one nucleus. So generally, cells typically only have one nucleus, but skeletal muscles are very, very common, and they can have 2 or more. And then in terms of their shape, they're very long and they're cylindrical. So here's a good example of a picture of skeletal muscle. So the striations, you can kind of see them here and here and here. Again, they're very elongated, and they have multiple nucleuses. So here, this one has 2 nuclei. Here's an actual photomicrograph of skeletal muscle. You can see those striations or those stripes within muscle fibers. You can see these little purple stained things are actually nuclei. So here's one big long strand of muscle fiber, and I can see right here 5 nuclei. So again, it's multinucleate. The second type of muscle is cardiac muscle. Now this is involuntary, so you do not consciously control this. You don't have to tell your heart to pump each time that you want it to pump. Your body automatically does it because your brain automatically or involuntarily tells your heart that. Now, cardiac muscle is only found in one spot. It's only found in the heart, and that's why it gets its name cardiac. So cardiac means heart. And its whole function of this muscle is its job is to produce movement, makes that heart pump. So when it contracts, it pumps blood out the blood vessels to the rest of your body so they can get oxygen and nutrients. Now, some characteristics of it, just like skeletal muscle, it also has striations or stripes. One thing that's different from skeletal muscle is instead of being multinucleate, cardiac muscle actually only has 1 nucleus. Another difference is instead of being long, it is actually short. They're pretty short, and they have branching cells. And the other thing that really sets it off, especially when you're looking under a microscope, are something called intercalated discs. So intercalated discs are very important. I would highlight that and star that in your notes because that is one dead giveaway between the difference between cardiac and skeletal. Now, if you don't know what intercalated discs are, all of these is where gap junctions are located, and gap junctions actually help connect cells together. So right here, types of muscle tissue. We have a picture of a heart because that's where it's found, and here is a drawing. So over here is a photomicrograph of it. These little dark stained purple lines that are more, I guess you should say, prominent are the intercalated discs. Now you can still see the striations in between the intercalated discs, so yes, you can still see there are stripes. And notice there are not near as many nuclei in this picture. Here is a nucleus, here is a nucleus, and there's only one per cell. And the last type of muscle tissue is going to be smooth muscle. Sometimes you'll also hear it be referred to as visceral muscle. So just know that it can go by both names. I do, however, use smooth. This is involuntarily controlled, which means, again, you cannot control it. Your body does it automatically, or your brain does it automatically. So some locations of where you can find it is in the hollow organs. So your stomach, your uterus, your blood vessels. You don't have to be like, okay, stomach, digest my food, or hey, uterus, make sure that you're telling me when I'm going to tell myself when I need to pee, or blood vessels. You don't have to say, okay, get wider or get smaller. In fact, your brain involuntarily controls all that. You don't have to think about it. It does it automatically. So its function is to contract, and it also gets larger to help mix things like in your stomach, to propel things like down your digestive tract, so to propel things down your throat or through your large intestine, and also just to move things, move substances. So a common term you're going to hear coming up in other chapters is peristalsis. Peristalsis is a wave-like activity, so it's contractions, it's contraction waves. And what these help do is move food through your digestive tract. Now, some characteristics of smooth muscle is one easy difference is the reason they get their name smooth is because there's no striations or there's no stripes. They are similar to cardiac muscle because this one, something it has in common is it does have one nuclei. And then they are described as spindle-shaped cells. So let's go ahead and take a picture of, or see a picture of it. Here, if you look at it, there is no striations. You don't see any. And there's different nuclei, and they're all together making a sheet. Now here, it's spindle-shaped. So here is a better picture or drawing of it being spindle-shaped because it's tapered at the ends. So the ends kind of come together to a point. So you might actually see that word tapered in your homework assignment. And then you have the last type of tissue. Now that we've covered epithelial, connective, muscle, you now have nervous tissue. So the whole function of nervous tissue is to receive and conduct electrochemical impulses. Now we're going to cover this a little more in detail when we go through the nervous chapter. So electrochemical means they use electric signals, but also they send out chemical in the form of hormones. So they're in charge of irritability and conductivity. They can send a signal, so that's conducting, for you to pull your hand away, for you to walk, and irritability. So if you touch something hot, it tells you to pull back. So nervous system is composed of two things: neurons, which are basically the cells, and then they have some support cells. And those support cells are generally called neuroglia. And their whole entire function is to insulate these neurons because you don't want to damage them. So they provide a little bit of protection, and they also help support them. So you're going to find neurons and nervous tissue in a lot of the nervous system's main structures. You're going to find it in the brain, the spinal cord, even nerves located all throughout your body. So here's a good photomicrograph of nervous tissue. Here you can see a neuron We're going to learn the different parts of a neuron when we get to the chapter about the nervous system. And then everything here is the neuroglia that helps support it. So here's another line, here is another line as well. Here's a picture that looks a lot similar. So right here is going to be your neuron, your big cell, and then everything outside of it is your neuroglia or your supporting cells. So here's a summary of the major functions and characteristics of our 4 tissues that we have covered so far. We have covered nervous tissue. So again, internal communication and control, where you can find it, brain, spinal cord, nerves. Here we cover muscle tissue in this unit at this section as well. The whole function is contract and cause movement. And so here where you're going to find it, attached to bones, in the heart wall, in hollow organs. And then last week we covered the other 2, epithelial and connective, so it kind of shows what their major function is and where you're going to find those as well. So that is actually the end of today's lesson. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.